For nearly half a century, American World Airways was not just an airline. It was the international face of the United States. Its blue globe logo flew into ports on 6 continents. Its pilots wore naval-style uniforms with gold braid that set the standard for commercial aviation nationwide. Its flight attendants were cultural icons. Pan Am was the airline that inaugurated transoceanic passenger flights, introduced the Boeing 707, commissioned the Boeing 747, and carried the Beatles to America in 1964. It was the glamour, prestige, and power of American aviation distilled into a single company. And on December 4, 1991, Pan Am ceased operations forever. When the final flight, Flight 436 from Barbados to Miami, touched down, the airline had no money left to buy fuel for the next morning. Its assets were sold off at liquidation auctions. Its iconic building in Manhattan had already been renamed. 64 years of history ended in a quiet, crowded bankruptcy court in New York. How does the airline that literally built the modern commercial aviation industry go bankrupt? This is the story of Pan Am, the titan that flew too close to the sun, and the series of catastrophic bets, tragedies, and systemic shifts that brought it crashing down. Pan Am was born in 1927, founded by an ambitious former World War I naval aviator named Juan Trippe. Trippe was not merely an airline manager, he was an imperial visionary. At a time when aviation consisted of wooden biplanes carrying mail across state lines, Trippe envisioned a world linked by luxury passenger airliners crossing oceans. Starting with a single airmail route between Key West, Florida, and Havana, Cuba, Trippe systematically secured exclusive international flight contracts from foreign governments across Latin America and the Caribbean. While domestic airlines fought over mail routes within the United States, Pan Am gained a virtual monopoly on American international air routes. In the 1930s, Pan Am introduced the legendary Clipper flying boats, massive seaplanes like the Boeing 314 that landed on harbor waters in San Francisco, Manila, and Southampton. Crossing the Pacific Ocean on a Pan Am Clipper in 1935 took 6 days and cost more than a brand new automobile. It was the ultimate luxury travel experience, reserved for diplomats, celebrities, and billionaires. Juan Trippe built Pan Am into America's unofficial flag carrier, supported by the U.S. government as a tool of foreign policy and diplomacy. If Juan Trippe's first miracle was the flying boat, his second changed civil aviation forever: the jet age. In the early 1950s, commercial aviation was still dominated by slow, noisy propeller aircraft. Trippe realized that jet engines could cut flight times in half and make international travel accessible to the middle class. In 1955, Trippe made a gamble that shocked the industry. He placed a record $269 million order for 20 Boeing 707s and 25 Douglas DC-8 jetliners. Competitors thought he was insane. No airline had ever committed such capital to unproven commercial jets. Trippe was right. On October 26, 1958, Pan Am operated the first commercial transatlantic jet flight from New York to Paris aboard a Boeing 707. Travel time dropped from 15 hours to 6. Passenger volume exploded. The jet age had arrived, and Pan Am owned it. Throughout the 1960s, Pan Am was the golden standard of global travel. Gourmet meals served on fine china, spacious first-class lounges, impeccably trained crews, and non-stop service to exotic destinations across the globe. Pan Am was profitable, prestigious, and seemingly invincible. In 1966, Juan Trippe made the biggest bet in aviation history, the bet that would ultimately destroy Pan Am. Trippe approached Boeing chief Bill Allen with a proposition: build an airliner more than twice the size of the 707. Trippe believed that air travel demand would double every few years and that wide-body aircraft would lower per-seat costs dramatically. Boeing agreed to build the aircraft, the Boeing 747 jumbo jet. Pan Am signed a contract to purchase 25 Boeing 747s for $525 million, an astronomical sum at the time. To accommodate the massive jets, Pan Am spent hundreds of millions more constructing dedicated terminals, maintenance hangars, and specialized ground equipment. The 747 was an engineering marvel, featuring a spiral staircase to an upper-deck lounge and room for over 350 passengers. But Trippi had miscalculated three critical factors: the timing, the economy, and the fuel. The Boeing 747 entered service with Pan Am in January 1970, right as the global economy entered a sharp recession. Instead of full cabins, Pan Am was flying massive 350-seat aircraft across the Atlantic with only 100 passengers on board. The per-seat cost advantage vanished. Pan Am was burning millions of dollars in jet fuel, flying half-empty giant planes. Then came October 1973. The OPEC oil embargo. Jet fuel prices quadrupled almost overnight. Pan Am's massive fleet of four-engine 747s became financial anchors, dragging the company underwater. Between 1969 and 1976, Pan Am lost over $300 million. To make matters worse, Pan Am suffered from a fatal structural flaw. It had almost no domestic U.S. route network. Because U.S. regulators had historically restricted Pan Am to international routes while protecting domestic airlines, Pan Am had no feeder network to bring passengers from Midwestern or Western American cities into its international gateways in New York, Miami, and San Francisco. When international travel dropped, domestic airlines could survive on U.S. routes. Pan Am had nowhere to turn. In 1978, Congress passed the Airline Deregulation Act. The protective shelter of route monopolies was abolished. Domestic airlines like Delta, United, and American immediately launched their own international routes, directly competing with Pan Am. While Pan Am still lacked a domestic network, desperate for a domestic route network to feed its international flights, Pan Am acquired National Airlines in 1980 for $400 million. It was a disaster. National Airlines routes were concentrated along the East Coast rather than across the country, providing little feeder traffic for Pan Am's long-haul network. Furthermore, combining the two corporate cultures and seniority lists resulted in massive labor friction and skyrocketing wage costs. To cover mounting debt and operating losses, Pan Am management began stripping the company of its most valuable assets. In 1980, Pan Am sold its iconic headquarters building in Midtown Manhattan, the Pan Am Building, to Metropolitan Life for $400 million. In 1981, it sold its profitable Intercontinental Hotels chain. In 1985, in an act of desperation, Pan Am sold its entire historic Pacific route network, the bedrock of its empire, to United Airlines for $750 million. Pan Am was burning its furniture to heat the house. The company was shrinking, losing money, and losing its global identity. By 1988, Pan Am was a shadow of its former self, surviving primarily on transatlantic routes out of New York and Miami. Then, on December 21, 1988, tragedy struck. Pan Am Flight 103, a Boeing 747 named Clipper Mate of the Seas, exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing all 259 people on board and 11 people on the ground. It was a terrorist bombing. The psychological impact on the public was devastating. Passengers avoided flying Pan Am, fearing further security vulnerabilities. Ticket sales plummeted during the peak holiday season. A U.S. federal court later fined Pan Am $250 million for security lapses, dealing a fatal blow to the airline's fragile balance sheet. In 1990, the Gulf War broke out. Jet fuel prices spiked once again, and international travel collapsed worldwide. On January 8, 1991, Pan Am filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Pan Am attempted to reorganize, selling its transatlantic routes and London Heathrow slots to Delta Airlines in exchange for a cash injection. But by December 1991, with losses mounting and passenger numbers continuing to fall, Delta cut off further funding. On December 4, 1991, Pan Am shut down permanently. Over 12,000 employees lost their jobs overnight. Pan Am did not fail because it lacked vision. It failed because its vision was too grand, too rigid, and too early. Juan Trippe built an airline designed for a world of regulated monopolies and unlimited prestige. When that world gave way to cutthroat price competition, high fuel costs, and nimble domestic competitors, Pan Am could not adapt its giant planes and heavy cost structure. Today, the Blue Globe logo remains one of the most recognized symbols in commercial history, a reminder of an era when air travel was magical, elegant, and grand. Pan Am built the jet age, but in the end, the sky it created was a sky it could no longer afford to fly.